Okay, what we're going to make here today is some cookies, some oatmeal raisin cookies, but you can make them oatmeal chocolate chip if you want. We're going to start off with a cup of sugar, 1 1/3 cups of brown sugar. Need 2 1/3 cups of all-purpose flour. That's 2, 1/3 cups of flour. Next we need 2 2/3 cups of oats, quick oats. It's 1, 2, 1/3, 2/3. Next we need 1 1/3 teaspoons of baking soda. I don't have a third, so I'm just going to use 1 1/2. Close enough. So that was 1 1/2 instead of 1 1/3 teaspoons. 1 1/3 teaspoons of salt. And then we want to mix all these dry ingredients up. It's a big lump of sugar there. Now we need 1 1/3 cups of butter. So it says that you want it softened, so you just take it out of the fridge ahead of time. And if you don't know, this one of these blocks of butter is 2 cups of butter, is equivalent to 2 cups of butter, and it's actually marked on the bottom here. 1/2. So we need 2/3. Here, I'll open it up so you can see. So if that's a half, that's about a third there, eh? Right there. So we're going to take 1 1/3. And usually what I do is I'll cut this up into smaller pieces so that it mixes in easier. I'll put all that in there. So we'll just clean up here a bit. We need some eggs in there. And this is 3 large eggs. It calls for 1 1/3 teaspoons, but I like to add lots of vanilla. Vanilla's good. And then you add the raisins, but I'm going to try and mix this up a bit first so that we can get this butter mixed into here. And you can use a beater to mix it, but I'm going to show you how you can just use a spoon if you don't have a beater. I hold the spoon like this with my thumb here so that I don't just bend the spoon. So that's looking pretty good. So now we should add some raisins. The recipe that I have calls for 1 1/3 cups of raisins or chocolate chips. I usually add raisins or chocolate chips till it looks like there's just the right amount of stuff in there. If you want a nice consistent mix of raisins and cookie dough, so I added a little bit at a time, and usually I add way more than 1 1/3 cups. In case you're wondering, the raisins I'm using are Thompson raisins. If you like the raisins that come in those boxes of raisins when you're a kid, those are Thompson raisins. I don't think it says right on the box, but they're Thompson raisins. So if you're looking for that type of raisin, because they're delicious, sometimes you go to the store and there's different varieties of raisins. There's Thompson and I think it's Sultana or something like that. I prefer Thompson. So that's about the consistency that you want for your cookies. I'm going to just get cleaned up a little bit and then I'll show you what you do with this. So anybody who's familiar with cookie recipes is probably thinking, man, that's a lot of cookies. And you'd be right. It is a lot of cookies. But the reason I make such a big batch is because I don't like to mix cookies all the time. I like to just cook them and eat them. So I got some parchment paper out here. So I just scraped out the bowl. I'm just going to add it to the mix here. And the reason for the parchment paper is because we're going to roll this out into a log. And the reason you roll this into a log is you store this in your freezer. It'll freeze solid. Then when you want to make some cookies, you open it up and you can cut off some cookies. So I'm going to take a little bit of this off so that I can, so that it'll fit on here. I also want to eat some cookies, of course. So I'm just going to take a section from the middle and make some cookies with that. So the reason I keep closing it up and doing that is because I don't want it to be all stuck with, like, the paper all scrunched up and stuck. I want the paper to be fairly smooth. So that when I roll it up, unroll it, I mean, when I unroll it when it's frozen, I get the paper off without it sticking to the dough. And if you don't have a freezer big enough, you can do smaller sections and put it in the freezer that way. Pull out what you need. I'll put this in the freezer now and then we'll make some cookies. So here's the cookie dough that I have. Looks like it doesn't quite have enough raisins in it, so I'm just going to throw a little bit more in. So I usually make my cookies on a pan. I just take some parchment paper and put it on the bottom there, that way the cookies don't stick at all. And I can actually slide this whole thing off. Pan doesn't even really get dirty, really. And basically you just have to throw down your cookies. You don't have to form them or anything, you just throw them down. Try to get a consistent number of raisins in each one, of course. And that's it. That's all there is to making cookies. I'll bake them and you'll see what they look like. So we're going to throw these in the oven. I'm just going to disconnect you from my rig I've got here. Okay, they're in. Looks good. So usually what I do here is I take the cookies, slide the pan out, and let them cool, and of course eat them. Delicious. Okay, I've preheated the oven. I pulled the cookie dough out of the freezer, and we're just going to cut off a few cookies. And I've even kept the parchment paper from a couple days ago when I baked the first batch of cookies, just to prove a point that you can reuse this parchment paper several times. And so what you want to do is cut off a few cookies and just put them on the sheet. If you don't have a nice sharp knife, you can let the cookie dough thaw a little bit, and then it's a lot easier to cut. Ooh, looks like a Borg cookie. That raisin fell out, so I'll just put it on top. It'll bake in. And you can make your cookies of different sizes. Generally though, you want them to be the same size on a single pan because they'll cook differently. The smaller ones will be done and the bigger ones won't be, so just keep that in mind. So there we go, another dozen cookies. I'll pull you guys off. And you'll be in there for another 12 minutes. Those look good. So that's after 12 minutes in the convection oven. and the cookies fall right off of the paper. And the best part, you can pre-cut some more cookies and cook them up as well. Now you're going to want to subscribe to my channel because I've got some more baking coming up, and it's going to be the kind of cookies that you might want to tune in for. I'm going to be baking up some pot cookies, and I'm going to show you how you can do it with just a spoon and the ingredients I showed you. Alright, y'all come back now. And make sure you bake up lots of cookies because you're going to have the munchies.